I'm so excited today because we are again going to explore Ozzy Osbourne in depth.
Yeah.
We already did it once with Black Sabbath, okay, in their 1970 debut.
Great album.
And now we're going to talk about Ozzy Osbourne's second album after Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman.
Yes.
And I'm doubly excited because we're going to talk about this album with our good friend John, who happened to be a drummer in your punk band, the Scary Mondellos.
Yeah. Welcome, John. Good to have you.
Howdy, howdy. Glad to be here.
And John, I'm not going to call out your age because I don't even know your age. I just know that you're a little bit older than Ken and I. Okay? So when this album was released, I was 7 years old.
I was 14.
You were 14. Okay, so there we go. That puts this in perspective.
Public school math.
I was not old enough to see Ozzy Osbourne in concert at the time. So I just wasn't. I was a kid, man. Nobody was going to take me to a rock concert at 7 years old. I know for a fact that you have seen Ozzy in concert. When have you seen Ozzy in concert?
I've seen him 3 times. I saw him in the summer of 1983 at the Texas Jam,
Okay.
the Astrodome in Houston. I saw him, and I don't know the date, 7 or 8 years ago in Austin when Black Sabbath did a. And then I saw Ozzy's last solo tour. He played at the Cynthia Woods Pavilion in Houston a couple days before or after my son's 18th birthday. So I took my son Evan for his 18th birthday to see Ozzy.
Okay.
His last tour.
Ken, have you ever seen Ozzy in concert?
No, I have not seen Ozzy.
Okay, so I've seen him twice. So as we all know, Ozzy pissed on the Alamo, and he was banned from San Antonio for over a decade.
Yes, to the point where when he was on tour with other bands, like when Metallica was opening, they came here and whoop, he met back up with them in Austin because they
Because he wasn't allowed back. He wasn't welcome back in San Antonio. So his first concert back in San Antonio was at the Alamo Dome, and I was there for that concert.
I remember that.
And then when Ozfest came around, Black Sabbath, all the 4 original members of Sabbath reunited, and I saw them at Ozfest. So
Jealous.
I have seen Ozzy a couple of times.
I am so jealous of that. I never saw Bill Ward play live.
Oh, it was awesome, man. I was dancing around like an idiot, man. It was like paganism, unveiled. So anyway, now I have not seen Ozzy. None of us have seen Randy Rhoads in concert.
No, and that if I can go back in time, it's a good thing I did not know when I was a little boy about Randall William Rhoads, because I would have begged somebody to take me to one of those shows.
Well, let me tell you a story. So we've all heard about Ozzy biting the head off the bat, right?
Of course.
You know this.
Sure.
Okay. That happened in Des Moines, Iowa on January 20th of 1982. Okay. I have older sisters. They're probably about your age, John. Well, they had tickets for the January 26th, 1982 show in Champaign, Illinois, because we lived in Illinois at the time. Well, Ozzy bites the head off in Des Moines. He has to go to the doctor, gets rabies shots, and gets the rabies treatment, which he has to continue to take.
Yeah. Ouch.
So a week later, when he's playing in the middle of a cornfield in Illinois, gets up on the stage, and this is what my sisters told. I remember this story from 35 plus years ago. He gets up on the stage, and they could tell, like, there's something wrong with this guy. This is Ozzy we're talking about, but there's something wrong with him. And he sings the first few lines of Over the Mountain. The first 3 words of Over the Mountain. And he goes, over the mountain, and then just collapses on the floor. Just drops.
Oh, wow.
And the band doesn't know what's going on. Like, hey, is this guy joking? Like, what's going on? So they just finish off the song. And then all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, he's not getting back up. and who knows what substances Ozzy was taking at the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he's mixing that rabies serum with something, right? Like, it's not just rabies serum. We'll talk about drugs here when we get into the songs.
I'm sure if we were to take Ozzy's blood and Keith Richards, we could come up with a cure for coronavirus.
I think you're right about that, man. That's a fact. You know, but anyway, so that was their Ozzy Osbourne experience. And I was telling John earlier, Ken, that they actually had the program for that tour. So they actually got to see Randy Rhoads play live for one song. Ozzy for 3 words, but the band for one song. Okay. And I had the program for years from the Diary of a Madman tour. And I was like, oh, John's coming over. Let me pull it out of a box and show. Man, I could not find it. I found an Iron Maiden Peace of Mind tour program from like 83, I think. I found a bunch of my old concert programs, like including the Ozfest program. Could not find that program.
You should feel special, John. This is the first time in our 30 plus years of friendship I even heard that he had a program with Randy Rhoads on it. He ain't ever bothered to even think about pulling out for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got my Texas Jam ticket somewhere. I've got a bunch of tickets. I used to save them.
So who did he play with at the Texas Jam?
I don't remember. I went to the Texas Jam 2 years in a row, and I saw Rush under Grace Under Pressure, Triumph. We left when Styx started, like everybody else. It looked like a colony of ants. They were doing the Domo Arigate.
Oh,
tour,
yeah.
And everybody was pouring out of the Astrodome when they came on stage. It was embarrassing.
So I pulled it
I saw
up.
Sammy Hagar. That was the 3 Lock Box tour.
Yep.
Which I was a huge Sammy Hagar fan back in those days.
Okay, so it looks, because I'm looking online right now, it looks like you were at the 1983 Texas Jam and the 1984 Texas Jam. Because when everyone exited on Styx, that was 83. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was also Sammy Hagar. 84 was Rush headlining and Ozzy Osbourne and your favorite band 38 Special opening up. Right? And hey, we should probably have John back here again when we do a 38 Special.
No, I don't think so.
All right, anyway. So this album, Diary of a Madman, released in 1981. It was the second solo album from Ozzy after a decade-long stint with Black Sabbath. And it peaked at number 16 on the Billboard 200. So it's a top 20 album.
Yeah.
And it's been certified platinum 3 times, triple platinum. So this is a successful album by any measure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and when you look at this album cover, Ozzy just looks like a full-blown ghoul. It's like he is ready for Halloween, man.
Yeah.
Got the torn, bloody pants, got the fringe, like, shirt. He has a little boy in the corner laughing.
His son.
But let's clarify, not his son that was on the Osbournes, Jack Osbourne. It's his son, Louis.
Louis, yeah.
Which I didn't know there was a son, Louis, because he
From the
wasn't on the
first
Osbournes.
The first marriage.
From the first marriage. Got it. Okay. And that symbol of heavy metal, the upside down cross, is right there on the wall.
Yeah.
Right? And so you know right now, you listen to this album, there's going to be some evil things on it. You're going to get ready for some Ozzy evil right here. Like we talked about with Black Sabbath, right? So anyway, let's start going into these songs. First song, Over the Mountain. John, you're a drummer. How long have you been playing drums?
Since I got my first snare drum in 1977.
Okay, so you've been playing drums for 40 plus years.
Yes, sir.
All right. When you hear Over the Mountain and you hear that drum intro come in, what's going through your head?
When I was a kid, it was just insane. I didn't know. I had no idea what was even going on. I could play 1, 2, 3, 4. So, but it really sets the tone for the song. Just extremely high energy, obviously. Right.
And for me, when I hear it, it's just the thunder coming in, right? Like when you picture those words, over the mountain, it's the thunder, like those clouds are coming in. Everything's getting dark before that band just blasts in. What about you, Ken?
When I hear this, well, first, I have to say, for an opening track, this is how you open a rock and roll album. That drum is as though The breacher. He is the breacher. He's kicking that door open, and then Randy's coming in, and he's destroying the room.
No, it's true, man. And Ken, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum on this show. You want that opener to be something that punches you in the gut, that knocks you down, and this delivers in spades.
Yeah. If this was not the opener, you wouldn't have an album. This opener says, hello, I am Ozzy Osbourne. This is my sophomore effort, and you're going to listen.
I think it's probably the fastest song on the album, or definitely the hardest song, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
Probably, yeah. I think so.
Looking at the track listing, because everything else that has some hard moments, but then there's soft moments, you know. But this one, it's full throttle.
Just
Right.
all the way.
What I love about it, though, is that despite that, right, it still has that melodic chorus. Ozzy just has a knack for melody. Like, everything is catchy with this guy. Seriously, like, when I hear Ozzy, whether he's playing with Sabbath, throughout his entire career, he just has that knack. And to me, that's not surprising because he was a huge Beatles fan. He got into music because of the Beatles. And if there's one thing the Beatles can do, it's get melody in the way.
And one of the other great things, because you'll hear Ozzy mention in interviews that he does not play an instrument. And I think that actually works to his favor because as a singer, as you said, he's melodic. He can come up with a melody. Well, if it's not melodic, you're not going to sing it and you're not going to remember it. Think about all of our nursery rhymes and whatnot that we sing. They're all melodic. We all remember them. That is why. And so because he doesn't have musical academic knowledge, you know, holding him down, if you will, he's free to follow melody. And if it works, it's going to stick. It sticks in the ear. Boom. Pass the asthma test.
There's several lead singers, and I always think of when I first realized that was about when I heard Perry Farrell, Jane's Addiction. It was vocals were another instrument for the band, and Ozzy has done that throughout his career, like another instrument.
Yeah,
I agree. And Ken and I mentioned this when we talked about Black Sabbath. Absolutely one of the most distinctive voices ever in rock and roll. You know Ozzy. Whether you like him or not, it's irrelevant. You know it's Ozzy once he opens his mouth.
Yep.
So anyway, I enjoy this song and the way it begins the album, but there are a couple of references I just want to touch in the lyrics. So he talks about his mind on a carpet, magic ride goes round and round. That's a callback to Steppenwolf's Magic Carpet Ride, you know, and we know, and I want to talk about these guys before we get into song number 2. We know that Ozzy's band at the time, was Randy Rhoads on guitar.
Yep.
It was Bob Daisley on bass and Lee Kerslake on drums.
May he rest in peace.
Right, and he was another casualty of 2020. You know? But when you hear this, you hear Kerslake pounding those drums away, right? Daisley probably wrote the words to this song. Daisley was like a lyricist. He's put these songs together, right? Kind of almost in the same way Geezer Butler put those Black Sabbath songs together, at least on these early albums. And you can always tell when bands are paying tribute to the past with these lyrics, you know, and so I always love finding little nuggets like that. Anyway, do you have anything else to say about the song before we head on?
This is the first, excuse me, being a guitar geek, this is the first time I've listened to this album and not dote over Randy Rhoads. So it's been interesting to listen to the rest. And Kerslake and Daisley, you hear them, and like I mentioned, we talk about other artists, so you can't have a phenomenal player without him being with other phenomenal players.
Right.
So that rhythm section,
right?
They're no joke.
Yeah, the rhythm section is the best money could buy at that time, I'm assuming. I always listen to drums and don't pay much attention to lyrics. And I think Randy Rhoads' guitar was always real overwhelming, but I've listened to this album and specifically listened to the bass, and Daisley is just incredible.
No, I agree. And we're going to save that for another song, obviously. Anyway, let's move on.
Track number 2.
Track number 2, Flying High Again. For me personally, this is 12-year-old Will's theme song. Okay? Now, I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't flying high. But I wanted to, right? And I say that in the sense that I love this song so much, I had no idea what it was talking about, okay? Because I was ignorant. And I'm listening to this song with my dad or my mom, somebody. I don't remember. The memory's hazy, not because of drugs, just hazy. And I just remember getting that look of death. Like, what are you listening to? What is this song about? And then to me, it's like, oh, it's about planes or flying, right? Like, but then realizing, oh, wait a minute, this is about drugs, man. Now, Ken, someone who has avoided drugs your entire life, when you first heard this song, what was your reaction?
So when I first heard this song, it was off the live album, right? The tribute. So again, being a guitar geek, all I'm hearing is Randy Rhoads. And then some teenager got older and I realized, okay, it's about drugs. Sure, whatever. It's still a cool stadium rock anthem song, if you will.
Right.
You know?
Complete sing-along.
So yeah, it didn't faze me.
So for me, it was just kind of like a metal anthem, and obviously it was about drugs. And I heard it when I was 14, and this was years before I had, tried any psychedelic drugs, and it gave me a false impression of what psychedelic drugs were.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, and for me, when I hear this musically, right, I don't think drugs. I just think exhibit number 1 on how Randy Rhoads just kills everything in his path on that guitar.
I still weep when I think about this song. So I'm actually, I'd say for the past 10 years, tired of this song, but I can't get enough of it. I'm at a point where it's almost like a train wreck. I don't want to look, but I can't look away. I have to listen every time I hear this song.
Well, there's a part in this song where he's doing a solo, and they're 2 completely different solos back to back, right? It's, the rhythm section's going, you still kind of have that melody in your head, but he's playing 2 different types of solos before he goes back into the main riff. And I'm just like, oh my God, he is just displaying everything in one song until we get further on into the album. And it's like, oh, he wasn't displaying everything. He was just teasing us with this song.
Oh, yeah. And we've had this discussion over the years before about a great artist, a great musician will sound better live than they do on the album. This was a great recording. They did a good job on this track. You listen to the live version off the tribute. When you can outdo yourself, that is a sign of awesomeness.
Yeah, and now I want to go back from the music back to the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
And we joke, we're like, it is a drug song, man. It's about getting high. However, there's moments in the song where you clearly talk about your mama and your papa and driving them insane. David Bowie in the 70s, he talked about driving your mama and papa insane, right? Here, mama's gonna worry. Yeah. Am I just a crazy guy? You bet, right? And this is Ozzy. Of course he's crazy. He's snorting ants. Okay? He's biting the heads off of bats.
And doves.
And pissing on the Alamo. He does not care. He is the madman.
Yeah, and it's rock and roll. That's what rock and roll does. You worry your parents so that they identify with the kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so for me, being 11 or 12 when I first absorbed this song, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow, man. Yeah, he is crazy. I want to be crazy like him. I didn't want to do all the drugs and snort ants and all that. But I could only dream about that lifestyle that he was living. Like it's kind of like I'm living vicariously through Ozzy's exploits and his singing on this song. Now, like I said, you're a little bit older, right? So you're in high school when this song was released, John.
Sure, I was like a freshman, and I think it terrified parents because this is the first time that a mainstream, an artist, heavy metal artist, became mainstream and introduced like mainstream middle class kids to real counterculture.
Maybe by that time, I was about to say, because the 60s had a lot of that.
This is I grew up out in West Texas, so and the 60s were long
There you
gone.
go.
The 60s were long gone. The hippies were gone by this time.
So this is
And
a new long-haired freak
This
threat.
may say more about me personally.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that I didn't live in the city where we had heavy metal radio and whatnot.
Yeah.
But out in Abilene, West Texas, it was kind of disturbing to the parents that were listening to Ozzy Osbourne.
It's flying high, and it's an upside down cross with this ghoul on the album cover. The whole package, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, there are what I would say anthems that Ozzy is just great at. Crazy Train, Flying High Again, Bark at the Moon, right? Yeah. Like every album kind of has that anthem. It's not necessarily the biggest hit, but it's that song that defines Ozzy. And he was doing this since the 70s with Sabbath, man, where you're always going to pick out that one song that says, okay, this song on this album, that's Ozzy's song. That's his anthem for this song. And would y'all agree that's that for this album?
One of. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I have a hard time separating the first two tracks because they're both just so awesome, so incredible. The rest of the album is, great for the most part, but a lot of it is filler for me because it's all about the first two tracks.
Wow. Okay, because we're gonna fight, John. All right, Ken's bigger than both of us. He's gonna pull us off.
I'm not saying there aren't other songs on the album that I don't love. But the album, my memory from being a teenager, it all revolved around the first two tracks.
Okay, for me,
like play, rewind.
we might as well just jump to the next song.
Which, as far as anthems go, booyah!
This is the anthem.
This is why I was saying one of the two.
Song number 3, side 1. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Now, the first time I ever heard the complete album, I was about 11 or 12. My sisters had the Blizzard of Oz cassette, so I had been listening to Blizzard of Oz since I was 6 or 7 years old. All right, that's when I got exposed to Ozzy. Right there, 1980, they had the cassette. I'm listening to that. I'm listening to Highway to Hell. We're listening to Joan Jett. They're just punching me in the face with all of this hard rock, man. I'm loving it. I'm absorbing this as a little kid, right? But it wasn't until I started collecting my own records, using up those Columbia House 1 cent deals, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, oh wait, I got this Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads album. Let me get this along with Bark at the Moon, right? I never pay. I'm sure my mom yelled at me, why am I getting these in the mail? What are you doing with this, But whatever. I only paid a cent for it, Mom. 1 cent, But whatever. Did that a lot, okay? But I remember getting this album, absorbing that cover. Like I said, I'm 11, 12 years old, man. And I hear You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. And that is everything I wanted rock and roll to be. Ken, as a guitar player, and I'm going to ask you about this. We know that Randy Rhoads was thinking about quitting the band and going to specialize in classical guitar, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a hint of that for me. Not the chorus, not the heavy metal part, but that soft undertone that begins the song.
Yep. This album gave way and gave a taste to what in the 80s, mid-late 80s, was called the neoclassical movement. So that's where a lot of our shredders, guitar shredders, real fast guys, where they mix the two, classical sound to a rock guitar sound. Yeah, he was the forefather, if you will, for that. And you're right, this is a good example of that, the way he would go soft and arpeggiate, almost as though he were playing a classical.
Now, John, we talked about the rhythm section before. for me, the rhythm section isn't really featured in this song the way that they are like on Over the Mountain, where those drums are in your face and you hear that bass,
Right.
or even Flying High Again, until the chorus. It really is an Ozzy and listening to the theme of the song, and it's about Randy Rhoads' guitar. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, but I think this song for me is about the lyrics.
Absolutely.
And after saying I don't pay attention to lyrics, I would say this song is all about the lyrics and the theme. You can't kill rock and roll, because that's, if there's nothing I haven't heard 100 times in my life at different times, is rock and roll is dead, which is always BS.
Even today.
Even today, that's BS.
And why? Why is it? Because I was going to say, man, more than ever, man, rock and roll is not played on the radio. It's not played anywhere. It's not
there.
really featured.
You may have to go find it, but it's there. Go listen to the Bobby Lees and tell me what you think.
Okay. And I'm glad you said that, because a good buddy of mine, Elwood, he's toured with tons of rock and roll bands as a guitar tech over the years. And I said, man, like, I'm kind of worried, man. Like, once these bands die, and then the next generation of bands, they become the oldies acts or, whatever.
Yeah.
They're gone. Like, who's going to pick up and play? He's like, look, man, rock and roll has always been about the underground.
Right.
It's just going to go back into the clubs and the basements where it was probably supposed to stay anyways.
Right.
And so then those who are going to want to find it, they're going to find it. And I think there's some truth to that. So I agree with you that it might not be popular. Someone like Ozzy Osbourne might never have another top 40 album. Albums don't even exist anymore. It's downloads, MP3s, YouTube clips. It doesn't, right? Albums are more or less a thing of the past. But the spirit of rock and roll is going to continue.
I was going to say the spirit, because that's what the song says to me. It's all
Right.
about the spirit of rock and roll.
No, and the one thing I also want to highlight before we move on, because I touched that this is to me like a Randy Rhoads showcase, is his solo on this song is completely different from the solos on the first two songs. It's not how fast can you go, it's more melodic, but it's just like another exhibit of I love Randy Rhoads, and I never appreciated him in the first 45 years of my life the way I should have.
No, you are correct. Well, as a Randy Rhoads guitar geek, if you will. His solos, okay, a good musician, when they play a solo, regardless of their instrument, it's as though they're saying something. Okay, it expresses something, they carry out a thought, a melody, but they can express something and take it somewhere, like a story from A to B. They take you on a journey. And he does it every time.
All right, let's move on to song number 4 here. And this was a song where I actually enjoyed the live version more than I enjoyed the album version, and that's Believer. And I first appreciated this song off of the tribute album, the 1987 live. I don't even know if it was live, right? It has to have been a live album.
Yeah.
Because here's the studio track. I don't know. They probably doctored it up, whatever. But I remember listening to the tribute album in 87 and saying, oh, I like this. But when I heard it on my diary record, I kind of passed it up. So for me, hearing it years later and say, okay, let me give it a chance because we're going to talk about this album on the podcast, I'm like, ooh, that bass. Ken, how many times have we said that on the show? That bass. And before I let you answer, I'm going to go to John. John, you're learning bass. Bob Daisley pops that bass. What's going on in your head?
Oh man, I'm just thinking I probably need to stick to drums when I hear that. I'm like, I could never get there. But the way he plays a slide in the intro, I don't know, it's the first chorus or something, but he's doing a lot of slide work with it, but it's just monstrous.
And Ken, as a guitarist, who also plays bass, but as a guitarist, when Randy Rhoads comes in with that initial riff, like, it sounds sinister. Like, these guys are up to no good. What's going on there? What's happening? Like, is it the bass combined with the guitar? Is it just all Randy Rhoads? Like, is it just the whole atmosphere? What's going on to make it sound
atmosphere.
evil?
So you have the low, deep, sinister bass going, And if you notice, and it's a good thing you brought up, John, with the slide throughout, or at the chorus, whatnot, his slide, the bass line is fluid. So it moves. It has a nice flow to it. Then Randy comes in, and his part is a little more pronounced, But you're right. It does have a dark, heavy sound to it, to the point where I even went back, years ago, and I had to look at it like, well, Randy never down-tuned or anything. Nope. Standard tune, and he just managed to hit that "we're gonna sound wicked" switch on that guitar.
Well, as classic rock fans, Ozzy loves that organ. He loves putting that creepy
Right.
Phantom of the Opera
Yeah.
organ in his songs to add that extra texture to the songs. And I'm kind of mixed, right? In the sense that when it's used to add texture to a song, I'm okay with it. When it's the main feature of a song, the song has to be something special. Like Deep Purple is a band I'm conflicted on because I feel like they overuse like the organ. What do you think, John?
I agree. I just, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, Deep Purple, or it's kind of before my time, and so I'm much more into 3 and 4 piece bands. But
I agree.
I do appreciate keyboards, like you say, when they're used mostly for texture and whatnot.
Right.
Which is probably part of my complete falling off with most of the music in the 80s. Pick a style, it really doesn't matter. When they got to keyboard, synth, patched
Drums.
yeah,
Electronic
concentrated,
drums.
Right.
it lost its feel. It's not organic. And here, through this album, you're right, it was used with taste and sparingly for effect and not to try to drive the show.
Now, I think I almost should ask you what your favorite Randy Rhoads guitar solo is on this album, but I don't want your head to blow up, okay? But I think for Believer, this would have been my favorite solo if it was longer. It's only about 30 seconds, right? But he's just shredding it during that guitar solo.
And that's the beauty of it, because it is so short, and this is a change variation for him, and he made the use of that not 30 seconds, but of that little bit of time, those few measures, he made the most of it.
Right. So I do want to talk about this because we've been avoiding it because we've just been trying to celebrate the album, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bummer to inside one on this, but for this album, listening to it the way it's supposed to be, with Lee Kerslake on drums, with Bob Daisley on bass, they had a legal issue with Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne.
Yep.
Sure.
Where then, I think around 2000, 2002, somewhere around there, they re-record the rhythm section
Yep.
with whoever was
I
playing
think
with them currently.
I think they brought in Trujillo.
Yeah, I don't care. Because
Well,
we're not listening to them.
They didn't get credit on the album.
Well, I think they got
Rudy
Rudy Sarzo.
Sarza and
Tommy Aldridge.
got credit on the album.
They were actually listed on the album.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, seriously, until I heard that Bob Daisley was writing a book a few years ago, I wasn't even aware. I always thought it was Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge, because at the beginning of the show, I told you, hey, my sisters had this program that I've had for
there
years.
they were, because they were the ones who did
But there's
the tour.
Sarzo, there's Aldridge, but there's no Bob Daisley, there's no Lee Kerslake. I could not pick those guys up out of a lineup,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Well, they litigated it and ultimately lost. It was drawn out in court for a long time, but they lost, and I don't know how, but they litigated it trying to get royalties from the sales of the
Right.
album.
I don't know either, man. I mean, but as musicians, for someone to just say, you know what, we're going to deny you credit for the work you created, how would that make you feel, John?
Horrible. I mean, I've kind of been through it in a way. I mean, I was in a band where I did all the drumming for 3 years and then left the band, and then the band got bigger and bigger, and the guy that was playing was just playing my drum parts.
Oh, man.
But there was no money involved. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was a very minor league level compared to this.
Yeah, it's a little bit different when there's money involved.
Yeah, that's definitely a kick in the gut. And one bright side, not bright side, but at least Tommy Aldridge, ever since when asked and it's brought up in an interview, he's made no bones about stating that's not me. You know, that's Chris. Like, listen, we sound different. That is him. You know, and giving him props for the work that he did.
Right.
You know, because he's an artist and he understands. It was a bum rap for him. It was an opportunity for Aldridge, and that's the way it goes at times. And it did suck. They did get screwed. That's the sad part of the music business.
Yeah.
And it is a business, and Ozzy, like the Rolling Stones and all the great biggest, or not all, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot. Ozzy approaches it as a business. He's known for stealing the best drummers. He's always had the best heavy metal drummer in the world because they come up somewhere and he finds them and he takes them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Matter of fact, this album, and good you brought that up, John, because as I was listening to this album, you know, preparation and realizing that saying, you don't dress for the job you have, you dress for the job you want. You listen to these songs, you're like, okay, Blizzard, they were on tour, they made it to stadiums, or he's looking to play at more stadiums. These songs, as you listen to this album, yep, they're definitely written with stadiums in mind, you know.
And I do want to mention Rudy Sarzo for a minute. How lucky can you be that you get to tour with Ozzy and Randy Rhoads, right? Then you join Quiet Riot just when they're about to blow up and have, you know, a #1 album with Metal Health and the Come On Feel the Noise. And then when Quiet Riot fades, he jumps on the Whitesnake train, okay, and becomes the featured bassist in Whitesnake. How lucky can you be, man?
I don't think it's luck. You know, that it's rock and roll is somewhat incestuous, and people are always trying to get the best players on their team.
And Randy and
Fair
Rudy
enough.
were back in the Quiet Riot days, the early Quiet Riot
Yep,
days.
that's true.
So,
Randy Rhoads was an original member of Quiet Riot, right? Well, good. Well, let's explore side 2 in a second because it's a little bit of a shift from side 1. Side 1 has your anthems, you know, it has those famous live tracks. Side 2 dives a little bit into the obscure. And here's what I mean by that. First song on side 2, Little Dolls, talking about voodoo, right? Ozzy's already taken us over the mountain. We've already flown high with this guy. We believe in him now. Can't kill rock and roll. But now let's talk about voodoo. The lyrics to this song are only one of the few components that makes this one of my favorite songs on the album, if not my favorite song on the album. What about you, John? Side 2, it starts with another thunderous drum opening just like side 1.
I love the drum opening. It sounds like a marching cadence, but he's not just playing it on a snare drum. He's playing it on the kit, which just makes it thunderous.
So most marching cadences are done just on the snare, is that right?
Oh yeah, if you hear a marching band, the cadence you're listening to is field drums or snare drums.
Okay, I'm ignorant to that stuff, so I'm like, ooh, that's the difference. I'm really excited about that. You know, but it does, right? Throughout that entire beginning, it just has that march, like you're going into your impending doom, so to speak.
You know, I'd never bothered, or I never noticed. I shouldn't say I didn't bother, but I did notice how side 2, first song, a phenomenal drum intro, just like side 1, where I don't think they tried to catch lightning twice, but I think they just let themselves go and decided, yeah, we're just going to rain down and do what we do.
And what they do is pay tribute to like some of the best music from the 1970s. One of the great things about this song is that there's always a catchy bridge that sticks in your head, and it's always the most, I want to say, elegant, prettiest part of the song. Doesn't matter how hard the song is, there's always that one bridge where it makes, oh, Ozzy's really a nice guy, right?
Yeah, that is definitely the theme on this album.
You hear it a lot. You know what I'm talking about, right? So during the bridge for this song, there's like a little Cheap Trick flavor thrown in there. And it's just something that, as a huge Cheap Trick fan, I noticed it right away. Ooh, wait, that's Cheap Trick. But then right before the drum break around the 3:30 mark, Randy Rhoads is channeling the guitarist from the Alice Cooper band, the original Alice Cooper band before he went solo. And I'm like, oh wait, he's paying tribute to Alice Cooper and those guitarists in that band right there. And so when I hear things like that, I instantly mark out, because there is no doubt in my mind that they're saying these caught our ear at one point in time, and we're going to figure out a way to throw them in a song. And I think they threw them in here.
Yeah, you always throw homage at your idols.
I got nothing.
And that's okay.
I read the lyrics for the first time today, I think. I never knew what the lyrics. I never knew this was actually a song about voodoo dolls. Actual voodoo dolls. And I thought, no wonder they told us we're going to hell if we listen to this.
It all makes sense now.
So the pins and needles prick the skins of... Well, like you said, you never paid attention, man. I thought it was the coolest thing. It just made the album more evil in my head, wrapped around this pretty melody, in that chorus. And I don't know. I just think that there are so many different elements in this song that just make it stick out. That marching drum beat. Like I said, that tribute to 70s guitar players from Randy, the lyrics, Ozzy singing, the sweet bridge, everything about this song to me is just like, we're throwing everything in one big pot, stirring it up, and you're going to love it.
Gumbo.
Gumbo, exactly. Let's go to song 2 on the album, or on the side right here. Tonight. I'm just going to say this right off the bat. Ozzy Osbourne is without a doubt the best rock and roll / heavy metal ballad singer in heavy metal history. Would you agree, John, or disagree?
100%, yeah. And this is a beautiful song. It always has been. I love it.
But as a kid, 12-year-old kid who wanted to fly high again and you can't kill rock and roll, skipped over it.
I know. I didn't. I loved it when I was 14.
But when you're 14, you've already hit puberty and you have girls on your mind. I mean, let's get real here.
I was still listening to REO Speedwagon back then.
Yeah.
Too, so.
I love REO Speedwagon, 100%, man. But think about this, man. Ken, Changes with Black Sabbath, Goodbye to Romance, So Tired from the Bark at the Moon. This one, Mama, I'm Coming Home, Close Your Eyes Forever, duet with Lita Ford.
Yep.
Right.
When you want a rock and roll ballad, man, call Ozzy. He's going to help you out there. Even Motorhead, when they do one of the softest songs that they've ever done in their career, I Ain't No Nice Guy Anymore. It's a duet with Lemmy and Ozzy.
Yep.
That's what you do. You get Ozzy on there because there's just something about his voice, man, that just catches you in the heart.
Yeah, no, you are spot on. And I also believe that goes back to what I said earlier, because he has to rely on melody. And because he has to rely on it, and that's what grabs us as humans, that's what makes a good song. So you give him a ballad, yeah, he's going to destroy that all day, every day. He will own it.
Yeah, and this song for me, when we talked about it earlier about when we saw Ozzy in concert, and none of us have seen Randy Rhoads in concert. This is one of those great what ifs. What if Randy Rhoads stayed with Ozzy throughout the entire thing? Because when I hear the guitar solo for this song, in my head I'm thinking every single rock ballad of the 80s. And there were a lot of them, because I think it was in their contract that every single album had to have a rock ballad. I think they're following Randy's formula in this song.
Well, as you mentioned it, now that you bring it up, the first 2 tracks off this side, I'm hearing 80s, LA, or West Coast, glam, and just the rock scene that came after this. That's what I'm hearing. And yeah, the power ballads that came after this. That's what I'm hearing from those first 2 songs.
Right. He set the pace for all the hair metal bands to follow, because they definitely all played on the ballad theme.
Now you're like I said, you're a little bit older than us, John. Mm-hmm. When all of that started happening, the hair metal, the power ballads, how did you react? Because like when you're listening to Iron Maiden and Ozzy and AC/DC, there's like this grit there, right? This
Right.
working man
Right.
ethos. But then when you get that glam and that LA scene popping off, it's a little bit different, man. Like, what was your reaction?
There was a weird transition, and I also went off to college in the middle of it. So, but it was heading south. Like Rat was phenomenal, their first couple albums, and then all of a sudden the market was flooded with Warrant and I can't Cinderella and all these bands, and each band had more makeup and more hair and more glam, and it was obvious they were all following a proven formula, so it all started to sound the same with a different front man to me.
Yeah, and the reality is, at least for me, is that because I liked a lot of that stuff growing up. Ken, you remember, man?
Yeah.
I was blasting that stuff.
Yeah.
To me, I enjoy a lot of that music, but you can tell, oh wait, this is formulaic, this is derivative, but then there's like a few songs, because some of the bands you said, Warrant, Cinderella, I like songs from all of those bands, Rat, but then there are other songs where it's like, man, you can tell this is just paint by the numbers, and you wish that they would have done something like where Ozzy says, hey, I'm going to do my thing, because Ozzy even wore some makeup around Ultimate Sin, and you're like, ooh, Ozzy, that glitter isn't going well with your look, man, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And to think that, like, every single one of those guys, when they're shredding, they're influenced by a guy like Randy Rhoads or an Eddie Van Halen. That's who they wanted to emulate, but then they're thinking, oh wait, we want to get girls, we want to get signed, so now we have to look like these guys with the makeup and have our hair teased out. And it's almost unfortunate, because I feel like because you get caught up in a scene or a type of music, you're not able to break up, you're typecast, you're stereotyped, whatever you want to say, and that's it. You're forever defined by that one era. And then like people like Ozzy, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, they survived that. Obviously the thrash metal rejected it wholeheartedly, your Metallicas and whatnot, but they survived by just being themselves and producing the music.
They were original. Motley Crue was original. Rat was original, but Rat was like the transition.
Yeah.
But Motley Crue comes out in makeup and spandex and stuff, but it was original. But then all of a sudden, every quarter or every 6 months, another band comes out, and
You're right.
They're all emulating that look, that sound.
Right, and even a band like Motley Crue, who we're going to talk about on this show in a future episode, they almost lucked out, because right after that Theater of Pain, where they were super glammed out, they said, you know what, we're just going to put on jeans and biker shirts and ride motorcycles and do girls, girls, girls. So they kind of prevented themselves from kind of getting caught up too much in that. And they're still able to sell out arenas.
They weren't copying anybody when they recorded Livewire. They weren't ripping anybody off down the street.
Right.
They just weren't. And,
No, you're right. So anyway, I didn't want to get on that sidetrack, but I'll always be a sucker for a good piano in a song. What I found out is that, like, Don Airey, who toured with Ozzy and who did the keyboards on Blizzard of Oz, he didn't even record the keyboards on this album.
And he still got credit for it.
Huh? and he still got credit for it.
Wow.
There's some guy named Johnny Cook, uncredited, man. Why? Just give the people who played on the album credit. It just drives me nuts. But anyway, let's move on to the next song. And I always called it Sato, right? But it's Sato. And I saw this on the internet. If this is wrong, someone out there, leave it in the comments. Tell me what the true story is. But I saw it on the internet that Sharon Osbourne said that the title of the song stands for Sharon Arden, because Sharon Osbourne's main name was Arden, and Thelma Osbourne, the name of Ozzy's first wife, so Sato. And then someone else said that the original title was called Strange Voyage. I read on the internet that it was Sailing Across the Ocean. So I don't know what it stands for. But Ken, what are your thoughts on this song?
I like the two women title myself. And not just because I like women, but because and in my mind, when I hear Ozzy and the tempo to this song, he also strikes me as a romantic. I said that, Ozzy Osbourne, a romantic, in the vein of Steal Away.
I don't think he wrote the lyrics, man.
No, but it reminds me of that as far as like Steal Away the Night.
Right.
It's moving and it's just that feeling of, okay, emotions, me, the boy, the girl, boom. That's what this song, the feel that evokes.
You know, I think I said with Over the Mountain that was the hardest song on the album. I think this one is just as hard, man. Like, it does not let up. It just keeps punching you in the face, too.
It goes.
And the album's not over. What about you, John?
I just want to get to Diary of a Madman.
Man, you can't shortchange SATO like this.
Y'all can bat this one around.
All right, I'm going to bat this around just for a second, Ken, because we always talk about when a band gels. Look, we already know that this isn't the touring band. That's Sarzo and Aldridge. But this, to me, is at least studio-wise when this band gels.
Oh, this song is cooking. Yeah, if you were there when they recorded this, you would, whether you liked the band or not, you would walk in there and be like, oh, wow, these guys are doing something. This is on. They are tight. No doubt.
Okay, that brings us to the final song on the album, the title track, Diary of a Madman.
Yeah.
Now let me read this little paragraph that I read off of the internet, and I copy and pasted on my notes. Bassist Bob Daisley said he wrote Diary of a Madman about himself. After suffering his first nervous breakdown at age 16, he quickly learned some of the biggest problems we deal with are in ourselves, which inspired lyrics like, I am my own worst enemy. Now for me, I always thought, this is Ozzy Osbourne's lyrics because he's the crazy man of rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
So for me, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, Ozzy must have wrote this. So when I hear that Bob Daisley wrote it, I'm like, oh, wait, Bob Daisley's crazy too? What do you think, John?
Well, I think he did a good job of writing it for Ozzy.
That's a great point.
I think Ozzy was cultivating, that image, and this song kind of brings it all out. It's just it appears to be about mental illness and craziness and whatnot, and the song goes through so many different parts.
And I do think that, yeah, Ozzy has some craziness in him. That boy ain't right. Let me say it right now. Love Ozzy, but yeah, he's a little bit off.
He could be completely sober.
Yep.
And there's still a screw loose.
Oh yeah, he would have sniffed them ants had he never touched. Had he been a straight edge, that boy was still gonna sniff some ants.
And it surprised me that Ozzy didn't write that. I always assumed Ozzy wrote it about himself.
And artists, you're right. It's easy. It makes sense because artists and mental illness, or however you want to call it, almost hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's not the first time, right, that someone's talked about being crazy. Alice Cooper in 1978-79 had an album called From the Inside, and he was locked up in a mental facility to try and combat his alcoholism, and he wrote about that.
Yeah.
David Bowie's brother was in a insane asylum in England, and so he wrote a song called All the Madmen about his brother being locked up. So
yeah. Cole Porter had suffered mental illness, wrote dozens of great songs.
And just so you know, John, Ken has to mention Cole Porter every show. It's in his contract.
In my contract.
It's done.
That's my rider.
Well, if we had $1 for every brilliant artist who killed themselves at a young age,
That's
drugs and alcohol, and a lot of that is self-treatment,
Absolutely. They're running from something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, we're talking about the theme of the album, but the music conveys that also. And so
absolutely.
Through this album, there's touches of evil here and there, right? The pins and needles prick the skin of little dolls, right? Believer sounds very dark. It all comes to a peak, to a climax here at the very end. That impending sense of doom that we felt throughout the album.
No, you're right. It accumulates here.
It's crashing down on us now. Now, John, one of the things I noticed was that that drum march is there again. We heard it earlier on this side, and now they're back to marching. But now they're marching to the end. It's almost like they're marching to mortar for their final stand.
That impending
Right.
doom.
It's just that marching cadence that's kind of moving the song along underneath the organ and that one part.
Yeah, and I think the part you're talking about, because it finally ends with this chorus that's reminiscent of famous classical work, Carmina Burana o Fortuna. And Ken, as our resident classical expert, where's that from?
Carl Orff, he was the
I've never
composer.
heard that name in my life.
Oh yeah, Carl Orff, and he even came up with a set of instruments that you'll see in rehab centers, Orff instruments, so that way they're set up and designed so anyone can play them and it can be musical. So I can give you an Orff instrument right now, Will, as you say you can't play guitar, you could make melodies off this thing.
Oh, you better get me some Orff instruments already. I'm ready for.
Is there one in bass? Is there a bass?
But it's that choral arrangement, right? That is evil. That's darkness descending from the, the sky.
It's that majestic sound of those open voices like that. Yeah.
and
Makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck.
And we always talk about this, Ken, on this show, that if you're going to have an album, you want something to open the album that's going to punch you in the throat. And when you end an album, it doesn't have to be the hardest or the fastest song, but it has to be memorable.
It has to grab you. You are spot on. And
So-
this grabs.
So Diary of a Madman grabs. What about you, John? Like,
It's really different. It's really different. It's not verse, chorus, solo, bridge.
Right.
It's at all. It's really orchestrated and what's the word? Produced. It's very produced for metal.
so when I was a kid, I always tried to lose myself in the music. I'm not saying I had an unhappy childhood. I just know that my escape was music. So you go in your room, you dim the lights, you put the record on, because like I said, I had this on record, and you just get absorbed in sound. A lot of this record is straightforward heavy metal, rock and roll, guitar solos, punch you in the throat, as we just mentioned. But then there's something like this final track, Diary of a Madman, where you lose yourself sonically, where you get that kind of surround sound. Do you understand where I'm coming with this?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was 14, right after this album came out, I had a Sony Walkman, and it was something special.
Yeah,
And,
we've talked about Walkmans a lot on this
Yeah.
show.
God damn.
Dating ourselves. Yeah, I remember this album when I was in college. I used to listen to this because I had to ride the bus to school. I had to ride the city bus, so it was a 2-hour adventure. And I used to sit with my headphones on, and so not the early '80s Sony Walkmans. This was '90s Walkman, and I thought it was so cool because I didn't have to take the tape out for it to play the other side. It would automatically kick over the other side.
So I had a Sony Walkman, and we had a funeral to go to, and a long weekend in Oklahoma, and I was just entering my teenage years, hating my family and hating my brothers. It was both my brothers and my mom and stepdad, and I was the oldest, so I got the back of the Suburban, and I had my headphones on, and I had this cassette. And I'll never forget listening to this over and over again, just freaking out on it because it was not Running with the Devil or Over the Mountain or anything. It's so different than any straightforward rock and roll or heavy metal songs.
No, I think I agree with that. And I think we can all appreciate hating somebody at that age. I hate to say this because this is Judas Priest's most maligned album ever, but on Turbo, there's a song called Parental Guidance, and I think I got a C in a class, and maybe I got put on restriction or something, and just playing that like 50 times in a row. So I can afford the Sony Walkman, John, with you and your privilege. Okay. But having said that, what an amazing album by Ozzy and Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake and, of course, Randy Rhoads And Don Airy, let's throw him in there too. Okay. Now, Ken, we do this every show. Favorite song, least favorite song.
I'm still stick to my guns. My favorite song, SATO.
Oh my goodness. And least favorite?
My least favorite, I'm gonna say You Can't Kill Rock and Roll.
Man, I don't know, man. Hey, John, earlier we were talking off the air and I said that you and I might fight. Ken's a really big man. We might fight.
We might fight him together.
Yeah, okay. It's going to be 2 versus 1 here. Oh my God.
Again, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The worst, song, my least favorite, is still like having to pick the ugly girl from Destiny's Child.
Well, hey, you know what I'm going to say? Because there's 8 songs on this album, and there's only 3 people in Destiny's Child. How about the least talented musician in Earth, Wind, and Fire?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still making out all right. You're still going to be just fine.
John?
My top track is definitely Over the Mountain.
Okay, and least favorite?
Little Dolls.
What? Oh my God! Both of y'all, get out of here right now. I'm done. Okay.
Okay, what's your what's your least favorite?
My least favorite.
Every song's a gem. What's your least favorite?
SATO.
Oh, see?
Having said that, right before the show started, and I do this off, I listen to it, and you hear a little bit of Iron Maiden, a little bit of Deep Purple in the intro, which Deep Purple probably copped, or Rainbow, somebody, one of those bands. And I said, oh, wow, I really like this song. Look, I like the songs on this album, but it's still my least favorite. It's the song that I least identify with. Favorite song. Now, there's two favorites. There's 12-year-old Will's favorite, You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. That's full rebellion, full-on anthem for someone who's trying to express something that they're not old enough to express. That's that.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
Old Man William, my favorite song is Tonight. Because as I get older, I get a little bit more sentimental. I start crying at commercials. I start listening to these soft ballads and I think, oh man, that song is so special. Then you start looking at pictures of your kids, you get a little fluttery, you know, like, so that's just the difference. But Little Dolls might be favorite song 1B. It's, to me, there's just so many different elements thrown in that 70s classic rock tribute in the middle there. I just love that song. But I really do love this entire album. I'm giving y'all a hard time about your favorites and least favorites. But this is really an amazing, no-filler album by Ozzy.
Yeah. And I love the fact that we have to, or that we do pick our least favorite tracks because it forces us. Again, and I always make the equation of the ugly girl from Destiny's Child. But you understand when I say that, everyone understands because there is no ugly girl in the band.
Right.
You're making out just fine. It's the same when
and there's no least talented musician in Earth, Wind, and Fire either.
Yeah. So yeah, whatever your least favorite track on this album is, that's fine because it's still better than half of everything else that you probably listen to.
Yeah, and you know, when I reflect on Ozzy's career, because there's a big stretch where I just didn't want to have anything to do with Ozzy. You know, during the Osbournes and becoming a reality show star and just kind of being this parody. But this guy did release a lot of great music. One was Sabbath, of course, you know, pioneers, iconic rock gods.
Yeah.
But then even as a solo artist, even without Randy Rhoads, just so many great songs, so many catchy songs.
Yeah.
I saw him 2 years ago for my son's 18th birthday. We went to Houston and saw him. It was the last time I saw him. And his voice is not what it was, but
sure.
He sit there for an hour and a half and just go, wow, wow, wow. I mean, everything was just a song that was huge at one point in time.
Right. It's just like, and it helps that you have a 50-year career where you can have all of these songs to choose from.
A 50-year career where, for another analogy, you're popping them over the fence. You're actually a player taking the field, making points, putting points on the board for 50 years, and not just I rode the pine for 50 years. He was actually involved in making music.
And I don't even blame him. I mean, look, right? When he's making albums that aren't selling as big, like, because think about this. No More Tears, which was probably his last, maybe Osmosis, that's like early 90s.
Yeah.
That's still 20 plus years of having like top 40 albums and hits, right?
Yep.
And then when his album sales start slumping, oh, let's do this little thing called Ozfest. Right. And then let's go have, these reality shows are happening. Let's put my family on there. They're entertaining, regardless of what you think. And let's keep reinventing ourselves.
So check this out. As you talk about reinvention, okay, my mother, she could point Randy Rhoads out in the lineup. Imagine that. Big surprise. My children know who Randy Rhoads is. Right. Another big surprise. Because my daughter listens to Post Malone, she now knows who Ozzy Osbourne is because apparently he's done a track with Post Malone.
Man, I thought we were going to get through an entire show without mentioning that. Oh, man.
Hey,
but you're right.
But it's part of that.
But you're right.
He just
One of my
continues
proudest
to push.
moments as a father was when my son was about 6 or 7 years old, and we used to commute a lot across town, and I would always quiz him, "Who's this?" And I would tell him who it was, and there was either a Black Sabbath or an Ozzy song came on, and I knew that would be a trick question, right?
Yeah.
And I asked him who it was, and he said that's Black Sabbath. But he knew who Ozzy was, but he
Yeah.
knew that he knew that was a Black Sabbath song. And I
When,
was
when,
like,
when my youngest son was about 5 years old, I took him to a movie and Paranoid played, and he's jumping up and down in the theater seat. I think it was King Kong, man. I don't know if that's appropriate for a 4-year-old, but it happened. Anyway, he's jumping up and down in the seat to Paranoid, and I'm like, yes, yes, that is my child. Anyway, John, it was great having you here. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I don't know what I did to deserve this, but thank you for having me.
You're a friend, man. Hey, trust me, we're gonna have plenty of our friends on here. Plus,
glad
you're a
we got
musician.
you.
Look, which is a lot more than I am, man. I mean, those are facts. I don't know. What
I wish I
drum
knew
cadence
half
is.
as much about music and bands and songs that you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, not everyone can be me. Anyway, no, seriously, it was great having you here, Ken. As always, love doing these shows with you, and we're going to kind of veer off into left field. I say left field because we've been doing so many rock and metal albums, and we're going to jump into a month-long excursion into funk and soul coming up.
And you're going to love it.
And you're going to love it. If you really enjoyed the show, please hit like, hit subscribe if you want to listen to more shows, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Peace.